Hello everyone, I'm Travis,
And I'm Nicole.
and let's get wanderlost. In our last video we talked about embarkation day for our Odyssey of the Seas Greek Isle cruise, and we also went over what we did in Santorini, Greece. In today's video we're going to go over the other three ports that we went to, which were Ephesus, Mykonos, and Naples, Italy. To start off, the ports that we went to on our Greek Isle cruise were amazing. They were some of the best collection of ports that we've ever been to on any of the cruises that we've been on. Santorini was right up there with Sitka, Alaska, and then three ports we're going to talk about today are just as good, if not better, than Santorini. So to start off, we'll talk about Kusadasi, which is where Ephesus, the ancient city ruins, are located. Kusadasi is on Turkey's western coast near the Aegean Sea. For this port, we booked an excursion directly through Royal Caribbean. We booked the ancient Ephesus excursion, which is an exploration of the ancient city of Ephesus. We booked this excursion directly on the Royal Caribbean website, and it was $100 per person. For this excursion, we had to meet inside the Royal Theatre aboard Odyssey of the Seas pretty early. It was around 7:30 in the morning. As a suggestion, make sure if you're traveling with other parties for the same excursion, make sure everyone is together at the Royal Theatre at the same time. Because when you walk up with your ticket, you're going to put a sticker on your shirt with a number. And if the rest of your party shows up a little bit later than you, they'll get a different number and be part of a different tour group. Kusadasi is a normal port, so we did not have to tender. The ship was docked at a dock. After we went to the Royal Theatre and we got our number assigned and our time frame came up, we were walked off the ship and onto a bus that was waiting for us in the parking lot. The bus from the cruise port all the way to Ephesus was about 20 or 30 minutes, and the guide was talking and giving different types of facts and history lessons along the route. When we got to Ephesus, we got off the bus at a market. From the market, we went through the main entrance of Ephesus, and then that's when the guide made sure that we had our earpieces on so we could hear what he was saying, and the tour began. Our guide was actually really good. He was very informative, spoke pretty good English, and made sure that if there was any questions that needed to be asked, that he made sure that he had an answer for them. Overall, he had really good knowledge of the city of Ephesus, and I didn't feel annoyed with the guide like I did for the nighttime tour of the Colosseum. The one thing that was kind of not so good about this excursion is it felt very rushed. We were only given about an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes within the city of Ephesus on this 4-hour excursion, and I really wish we would have had more time to explore. We did see the Library of Celsus, which was amazing in person. Make sure, if you are an excursion, kind of break away and walk down the steps and get in front of it so you can see how immense it is in size. As somebody who loves history, it was really cool to see this up close and in person. I wish I would have had more time to walk through the gates and that sort of stuff, but kind of understandable with the limited time that we had. We also went to the Temple of Hadrian, which we actually got a little figurine of the Temple of Hadrian for our memory cabinet as well. The theater of Ephesus was gigantic, and the acoustics were really cool. If you clapped your hands in the center of it, it echoed, and it was actually louder than if you were just clapped your hands off the side of the theater. And one of the really cool things that we saw in the city of Ephesus was the carving of the goddess Nike, which is where the shoe company or clothing company Nike got its name from, and the logo of Nike came from that carving as well. Overall, the city of Ephesus is definitely worth a visit, especially if you like history, if you like the ancient cities, if you like walking through ruins. We really enjoyed it and would go back. I really wish we had more time to actually walk around the city of Ephesus. There was definitely some areas that we didn't get to check out. Next time, probably we would do like an Ephesus on your own type of thing, where you could just walk without a tour guide and maybe just read the plaques and that sort of stuff. But overall, really good experience, very informative. I was actually researching more about the city on our way back to the Kusadasi port. On our way back to the port, I don't know what it is with Royal Caribbean excursions. They make you stop at a store or a shop. We stopped at a Turkish rug manufacturer, like a business that makes Turkish rugs. and we got a demo on how they make Turkish rugs. And then we sat in a room where they handed out like a snack, apple tea, some wine or champagne and stuff, and they proceeded to roll out like 50 or 60 Turkish rugs and did a hard sell for people to buy them, which would have been cool if they were reasonable. I know they were really good quality and they're made out of really good materials, but some of these rugs were $12,000 to $20,000 a piece. And when you're on an excursion, you spend about $100. You're not going to spend $20,000 at a rug store when you're in, another country. Kind of a weird experience, but overall, the excursion for ancient Ephesus was really, really cool. We would do it again, but I wish we had more time in the actual city of Ephesus.
After you leave the rug shop, you have two options. You can either stay and explore the port, or you can head back to the ship. So we decided to stay on land and explore for a little bit. There's a lot of shops in the area, as well as a couple very large markets. Once you go through the markets, you can find a little bit of everything. They have souvenirs, Turkish towels, all sorts of wares, anything that you could really think of, they do have. We got a couple little souvenirs, a magnet. We went into a few of the shops, did a little bit of shopping, but overall the sales associates are a little aggressive, and it's not really our style. We prefer just to browse. We don't necessarily really want to talk to anybody. So overall, it's a very safe port. It felt clean. There was a lot of security. There was a lot of things to walk around and do. Seemed like there was a lot of food options. We didn't eat anything in the port. We went back to the ship for food, but our friends did, and they said they really enjoyed it. And they actually said Turkey was one of their favorite ports. So if you enjoy shopping and kind of a little bit of bargaining, then it's probably the port for you.
The next port that we went to after Turkey was Mykonos, Greece. Mykonos is a really cool port. I'm going to tell you what we did in this port, and then Nicole is going to talk about the actual port of Mykonos. We did not have an excursion for Mykonos. It was the only port that we didn't book one in advance, and we were kind of not really sure what we wanted to do. Our friends that were with us, they made the suggestion they go to the ancient island of Delos, which is a ruined island that is said to be the birthplace of Apollo, the Greek god Apollo. What we did is you have to take a water taxi from the new port, which is where Odyssey of the Seas docks at. It is a normal dock, no tender needed. And you have to take the water taxi over to the old port of Mykonos. And it costs €2 per person, which is not bad. When we got to the old port, there is a little stand there that you can buy tickets to go to the ancient island of Delos. It costs €22 per person to get to the ancient island of Delos. It's about a half hour by boat to get there. When we got to Delos, we had to buy admission tickets for the actual island, and those are €12 per person. So total to get there, it's about €34 per person. So the ancient island of Delos is really, really cool. It's, like I said earlier, it's the birthplace of the Greek god Apollo and his brother Artemis. The island was used for temples and like sacrifices for the Greek god Apollo, and different countries or city-states in the area would actually build temples on the island, worship of Apollo or Artemis. It was a lot of different types of buildings that were built there, different types of cultures, different city-states. It was really cool. The island currently is an archaeological site that the European Union and some universities are actually working on to, find more information about it, dig things out, and basically reconstruct what it looked like. There is a ton of things to explore and walk around. There wasn't any type of tour guides for us. All of the maps were in Greek, so you weren't able to actually read where you were going. They did have nice plaques that were in 3 different languages, so you could read about some of the things that you were looking at. Some of the stuff that is on the island, there are different types of workshops. There's obviously your pillars and stuff that are all ruined. You have these really cool lions, and there's a bunch of them in a row that were from, I think, like 50 BC that are super old, and they're really cool to look at. There's ancient Roman pottery fragments all over the pathways and stuff. and you feel like you shouldn't be stepping on this stuff, but it's there. We picked up a few of the stones or whatever, and it's all terracotta or like pottery material. Kind of really cool that it's just there for you to pick up, look at, and examine. The one downside of when we went, the museum that has a lot of the sculptures and stuff was closed for remodel. Would be nice to see that whenever it does reopen. Some of the other things that we saw, there were bathhouses with unbelievable mosaics on the floor that are thousands of years old. There's a huge amphitheater or a theater, whatever you want to call it, that was really cool to look at and stand in front of. And there was a gigantic mountain with a temple on the top of it. And I tried to convince everybody in our group to climb the mountain. There's a path that leads up to the top of it. I couldn't get anybody to go with me, so maybe next time if we ever go back to Delos, I'm definitely climbing that mountain to check out that temple. The island of Delos does not have any type of food. There's only one restroom and there's a line for it. There's not very many types of services there, so make sure you eat before you get there if you're hungry, because you have to take the boat ride back before you can get food. There was a small gift shop there, but the merch was just okay. Nothing really to buy that was really worth what they were charging. But I was very impressed with the island of Delos. I would go back. There's plenty more to explore there than what we did. And we were there for a few hours, kind of just walking around and checking things out. I would put it on your list if you're in Mykonos and you wanted something to do without doing an excursion. We definitely recommend it. It was awesome.
Once we were done on the island of Delos, we took the boat back to Mykonos. The boat does come, there's scheduled times, and it is only a few times per day, so you do want to make sure you plan in advance to make sure, because I believe we had an option of 1:30 or 3:30, so make sure that that will fall in line with your schedule so that you don't miss something or get back too late. Once we got back to Mykonos, we explored the old port area. There were tons of shops, tons of places to eat, little snacks, gelato shops. We went to the windmills and walked around. It was really nice. So we were able to explore the old port before we took the boat over to Delos as well. And I would definitely recommend going and doing so early if that's something that you want to do. The downside is that a lot of the shops were not open yet because it was really early. It was maybe like 8 a.m. But weather was cool. It was quiet. There was really no one else in the village. So it was a really great time to take a lot of pictures, just kind of walk around. Very relaxing without being super busy. When we got back that afternoon from Delos, obviously the weather, it was a little bit warmer, still nice, but it was very busy. There were a lot of people, and the streets in Greece they're very narrow, it's very small, so you do kind of have lots of crowds bottlenecked in these little areas. But overall, I would definitely recommend Mykonos. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very scenic, picturesque, and overall just a really good port. We ate lunch at a restaurant called Pepper. It had great food. We had a really great lemonade drink. We all really enjoyed, we either had chicken or pork. Everyone enjoyed the food. It was a great place. They actually had a ton of different seating. They had seating outside in like 3 different areas, inside. So we got a seat right away because they had plenty of space. And I would definitely recommend it if you're in the area. And then after that, we did some more walking around, a little bit more shopping, and then took the water taxi back to the new port to get back on the boat.
We really liked Mykonos. It was an excellent port. The one negative about this island is the wind. It was heckin' windy. We made a comment to our waiter at Pepper about how windy it was that day, and the waiter said it's not even windy today. All of our videos, everything we recorded, you can't use any of the audio from it because it just sounds like you're going through a wind tunnel. We were not expecting that. It does make sense though, because when you look around the island of Mykonos, there is no tall trees. It's very low shrubs and that sort of stuff. So just be prepared that when you go around some corners, your hat might fly off if you're wearing one. And if you're wearing a dress, wear shorts underneath them. Overall, great island, but the wind was something that you need to be prepared for. It was very, very windy. The last port on this cruise, so we had Santorini, we had Ephesus, and we had Mykonos. The last port was Naples, Italy, and this is one of the ones that I was really looking forward to because in Naples, Italy, you have the ancient city of Pompeii. I've wanted to go to the city of Pompeii since I was a small child going through history classes and learning about the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, and the damage done by Mount Vesuvius and how the city was buried by a volcano and the really cool photos and how it was mostly preserved over the centuries because it was covered under ash and dirt and that sort of stuff. It was on my bucket list of places to go. We booked an excursion called Ancient Pompeii through Royal Caribbean directly on the Royal Caribbean website. Again, about $100 per person for this excursion. And obviously, we finally got a chance to go. From there, we drove on the bus to the city of Pompeii. There's a parking lot across the street. You walk across as a tour group to a meeting area right next to the entrance of Pompeii. I don't want to complain about excursions because I feel like I'm doing that a little bit on these videos, but the tour group that this excursion was through, that Royal Caribbean used, was very unorganized. It felt super chaotic. The tour guides were not engaging at all to start off, and it was kind of like what are we doing? Like, what's going on? It's someplace that you really wanted to go and you were really looking forward to, and it was kind of disappointing to have that type of feeling. And I was getting a little annoyed with our tour guide. His name was Enzo, just because they did not feel like they knew what they were doing at all. So we got through the gates of Pompeii, and then we walked through the main entrance, and it kind of leads you into like a gladiatorial area. Like a little amphitheater, like a small amphitheater where a big grassy open area. And that's kind of where the tour starts. And you get to see some really cool sights. You see the old cobblestone streets and how there's tracks built into it for how many chariots and stuff walk down those streets back in the day thousands of years ago. There's rows and rows of obviously ruined houses and little shops. It kind of reminds you of a major city. Let's say New York City turned into ruin and then you just had like all the bottoms of all the buildings everywhere. That's what it felt like. It felt like a huge metropolitan area that was just in ruin and well preserved besides all the roofs missing sort of thing. We went through a bathhouse, which was incredibly preserved. You could still see the mosaics on the ceilings and the floors. They took us through a little kind of garden area, and you've seen the photos, if you've researched Pompeii at all, of the people that were basically turned into clay when the ash and pyroclastic flow ran over them. And they're literally like a statue. They look like statues. And they had 3 of those inside glass cabinets in this little area. Obviously a long line to see them. Kind of creepy, but at the same point very interesting to see because that used to be a person 1,000 years ago. From there we walked through a grand courtyard, saw some temples. Overall, like, I was in awe of Pompeii, and I was trying not to listen to the tour guide. I was kind of doing it on my own. I had my phone on me. I took the microphone out of my ear at one point because I just didn't want to listen to him. There was one person in our tour group that was kind of asking some really dumb questions, and overall I just wasn't in the mood for that sort of stuff, especially after how chaotic and unorganized it felt. So I kind of walked around on my own. Nicole was following me a little bit. She kept going back to the group. I could have spent all day in Pompeii. It was incredible to be there. It's a place that you've seen in history books, a place that you've read about. Just the history of it, the immense feeling of standing in the middle of that and knowing what happened when Mount Vesuvius exploded. I would go back. Next time we go back, I'm doing a tour on our own and kind of just exploring whatever we wanted to explore. We missed a lot of stuff. The tour was not as long as I wanted it to be, but I would go back to Pompeii in a heartbeat. And if you're going to the Naples, Italy area, it should be on your list. Obviously, you have Capri as an option for Naples, Italy, and you have the Amalfi Coast as well. I would go back to Pompeii, even though I really want to go to those other places as well. It was incredible. It was amazing. Really awe-inspiring place with so much history, and kind of at a loss of words to kind of describe how it felt being there. We went back to the bus, drove back to the city of Naples, the port of Naples, and did a little bit of exploring there.
Once the bus took us back to the port, luckily the main area of Naples is well within walking distance. It's maybe a 5-minute walk from the port. You just have to cross the street and really you're there. There were a ton of shops, a ton of different places to eat. We were all hungry, so we were looking for pizza because that's what we said we had to have when we were in Naples. So we just went down a couple little side streets, found this small little hole in the wall called Antica Trattoria da Papino, and had pizza. Travis had the lasagna pizza and I had the stromboli pizza. They both had ricotta cheese on them. They were delicious. It was a really good choice. Sometimes when you just randomly stumble across the place, you don't really know what you're going to get, but this one was a good decision. So I would recommend it if you're in the area. After lunch, we did some more walking around. We went to the Galleria, which is kind of like almost a mini mall, maybe. It did have some shops that you would be very familiar with from the US, as well as some that are probably more Italian based. But the architecture of this building was really cool. It was a nice place to be, and it was really interesting to see. In that same area, we found a little pastry cart. So we stopped at this cart because we saw that they had some pastries that the cruise director had said Naples is known for, so he said to make sure that you get them. So we got a couple of those. They were really good, and then we just kind of walked around the Galleria for a little bit. After that, we just went up and down the streets of Naples. We finally made our way to the coast, walked along the coast. There's a lot of really great architecture, a lot of historic buildings. There were a couple castles. Overall, it's a really great port. I enjoyed it. There's just a lot to see just walking down the streets. You don't have to... Obviously, you want to pay for an excursion for like Pompeii or something like that. But you could also spend the day just walking the streets of Naples.
So that kind of wraps up all of the ports we went to on our Greek Isle cruise. So last video we talked about Santorini, and in this video we talked about Ephesus, Mykonos, and Naples, Italy. The Greek Isle cruise that we were on, I will say this is probably the best collection of ports that we've ever had on any cruise. Just about every cruise you go on, you're like, man, I wish we could replace this port with that one. So Nassau with St. Thomas, or Nassau with San Juan, or Nassau with St. Martin, or just remove Nassau altogether. But we didn't really have that type of feeling on this cruise. Every port was great. We spent a lot of time on land. We used up every minute of our time in the ports, which is something we don't do in the Caribbean. It was great. This Greek Isle cruise was unbelievable in terms of the places that we went and the stuff that we saw. So of the 4 ports we went to, Nicole, which one was your favorite?
I would probably have to say that my favorite port was kind of a tie, which is not fair, I know, but between Santorini and Mykonos. I really enjoyed Greece. I loved seeing the buildings. The food was fantastic. The weather was great. I guess I would probably have to pick Santorini if I had to pick one, but I want to go back to both.
I will say my favorite port of the 4, Santorini's right there, but I'm going to go with Naples. Pompeii was unbelievable. The city of Naples kind of was way better than my expectations of that city. And if we were to go back to Naples, we were definitely going to the Amalfi Coast and maybe the Capri type of thing. That area was really cool. The pizza we had at a little hole in the wall was some of the best pizza that we've had at any restaurant ever. And just the history, the historical buildings, the stuff that we did, Naples was excellent. I would rank it just maybe a hair better than Santorini. Nothing against Santorini. Santorini was great as well.
And maybe we'll be back.
And you never know, maybe this October we'll be back in that area. I don't know. We're kind of trying to plan our next trip. We've been talking about going to Orlando, back home to visit with friends and stuff. But there's always a chance we could end up on a cruise out of Barcelona and go back to Rome and Naples and a few other places. Maybe. I don't know. We haven't made a decision yet.
Stay tuned.
So in the next video, there's a lot of stuff about Odyssey of the Seas that we have not talked about. We kind of wanted to break this down into a couple different parts. The ports were amazing, so we wanted a video kind of dedicated to a lot about what we did in those ports. The next video, we're going to talk about some of the stuff we left out in our first video about Odyssey. So like the Effectors show, a couple of the headliners, the few other things that happened in the 270, the drink packages we had, dinner at Izumi, and then we'll also talk about like our last day in the city of Rome and our trip back to America and our flights and that sort of stuff. So if there's anything that we might have missed on this video, or some information that you might have wanted to know that we didn't actually touch on, please leave some questions in the comment section below. And as always, make sure you like and subscribe.